Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to week 2 of our 30 Days of Christmas giveaway. Thanks to everyone that's tuned in. Thanks for those who are commenting us. Drop us a comment. Let us know where you're watching from. Let us know which prize you're hoping to win. And yeah, it's really exciting tonight. Just we can mute that side there, sorry. And yeah, 30 Days of Christmas. Don't forget every single entry. So if you enter every single day, every single entry that you put into the every single entry that you do over the 30 days, every entry goes into the draw at the end on the 16th of December to win a pair of Vortex 10x42 Diamondback binoculars. These are super awesome binoculars. You can go onto our YouTube channel and you can check it out. We have got an unboxing episode there. Also, don't forget the Canon PowerShot Zoom digital camera is also going to be one of the prizes we're going to give away. We've got some really cool prizes. So thanks for coming on board. Don't forget to follow The Birding Life on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. We're on YouTube. And we're going to be in a whole lot of other places. We've also got a Telegram group if you want to be a part of that. Just drop us an email on Instagram. And also the podcast is going live tonight with it's our Birding Life show. It's a really cool episode. We talk about youth birding. We talk about different apps and different technology that's available for birders. We speak about the Youth Birding Challenge, a whole lot of different things. So that's just gone live. That's just gone live at 7 o'clock. So straight after this, go over, listen to that. And if you do listen to the podcast, just let us know where you're listening to it from. This Saturday at 6 o'clock is the first week that the Youth Birding podcast will start going out every single week. This week we've got an awesome guest, Tristan Ordier. He's going to chat about his passion for birding. I know he also loves snakes, so I'm sure he'll speak a bit about snakes. But yeah, we want to welcome you tonight. We're really excited that you're with us. And tonight, before we get into the giveaway, just like last week, we have a really awesome guest on the show tonight. Just a shout out for next week, we have Fancy Peacock coming on the show, and we were looking forward to that. We're going to drop him an LBJ challenge, so it's going to be a lot of fun. But tonight, we have a very, very special guest. We have just, on the last 30th of November, we finished the Spring Fling Youth Birding Challenge along with Bird Lasser. And what was amazing, this was a 3-month challenge. And over the 3 months, these were birders 25 and under, if I remember correctly. 25 and under, they recorded 677 species. That is insane. Let me go through the top 5. In 5th place, Declan Jordan got 390 species. In 4th place, one of our Birding Life ambassadors, Zach Simpson, got 395 birds. In 3rd place, Tristan Spurway just got 400 birds. Really an amazing, amazing effort. Don't forget, this is in 30 days. 2nd place, Jordan Ralph, 434 birds. And tonight we have got the winner of the Spring Fling Birding Challenge with a grand total in 3 months of 450 species. That is insane. So tonight, without further ado, we want to welcome Daniel to the show. Daniel, it's good to have you with us.
Awesome, Adam. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
So Daniel, you've been on our podcast before, episode number 18. So I encourage people to go give that a listen to a little bit more of your story in there. Wow, dude, flipping insane. How the heck does someone see 450 species of birds in 3 months while doing the trick?
Well, first of all, obviously, a lot of birding. That's the first step. So getting out as much as possible, but obviously you have to balance the exams with it. So over the last 3 months, I've been writing exams pretty much full stop for those 3 months. And any gap I could find, I basically went out birding, planned some trips. And yeah, it was quite a struggle balancing the school and the birding, but it was absolute pleasure. Absolutely loved it.
And you speak about that balance. How did that balance look for you? How did you manage to balance the two? Because, I mean, matric is your most important year of school. It determines where you can go study university and that kind of thing. How did you get that fine balance? Because it's not easy.
Yeah, well, for me, I mean, the main thing was obviously, like you said, it's matric exams. You have to really knuckle down and study. So what I would basically do is I'd study as hard as I could for 3 days, and then I'd write my exam, and then I'd usually have a day or an afternoon off, and I'd use that into birding, usually around Polokwane. And if I had end off, I'd go a bit more further afield. But yeah, obviously the main thing was the exams, and I sort of fitted the birding around that. Yeah, I mean, on some days, for example, one Sunday I was writing for sciences, quite a big exam. And a report came through for Fulvous whistling duck. Now, in Polokwane, Fulvous whistling duck is quite a sighting. I'd say one record a year. So immediately, I mean, the temptations were running high. I obviously felt I had to get it, but I said, okay, the duck, it would probably be the next day, so I decided I would wait. Just to say, about 10 minutes later, Raisin Curlew, hopefully Raisin Curlew came through. I had to drop the books, go get that curlew, go get the Fulvous duck, and yeah, anyway, the exam still went fine, so it was definitely worth it.
So you spoke about some of those two birds. Out of all the birds you've seen, what were some of the top birds? What were some of the highlights of the 450 species that you managed to see?
I mean, it's a really tough question. There were a number of amazing birds. Some of the resident species, Bathhawk was fantastic. African monos chat, Boehm's pinetail up in the northeastern parts of the province. Great sightings of pulse fishing owl. So there were a number of that stood out, highlights. And then also managed to track down a couple of vagrants, especially for Limpopo, Asian green sandpiper, grey plover. So those were some of the main highlights. But yeah, overall, some fantastic work.
It's crazy. We were just chatting before about your KZN trip last year, and Tyron is next to me as we spoke about that elusive bird that he has never seen. I don't think he even believes the bird exists, the green barbet, and you spoke about a bird that I think we would argue that a lot of people listening would probably say is just a fragment of someone's imagination, a fragment of someone's doing Photoshop or something. I mean, Pell's fishing owl, I've looked all over and I've just never been able to see that bird.
Yeah, no, Pulse is obviously quite a tough bird to find. I have a relatively good spot, so next time you guys are up in the Popo, you have to give me a shout, and I'll see if I can track one down for you. But yeah, I mean, it was amazing. We got there, and luck was on our side, and it took us about 5 minutes, and Pulse just slowly over the river and landed on the other side, broad daylight. So spectacular.
We need the luck you guys have got. So for this 450 bird challenge, you've spoken a little bit about a couple of areas you went to, but what was the area that most of your focus was on for the challenge?
Well, I'd say 99% of my birding was here in the Limpopo province, and I did do one small day trip to Langa, and I managed to get all of the other 448 species. Those were all from the Limpopo province. And I'd say that province I focused specifically around my hometown in Polokwane. I think I got probably about 220 of my 450 just around my hometown. So that was definitely where my search was mostly focused.
And I know we spoke about this in the podcast, but for the sake of those that maybe haven't heard the podcast, what is your home patch? What are some of your favorite spots that are close to where you stay that you bird very often?
Yeah, and I always say Polokwane is by no means the best town out there, but it's close to a number of fantastic spots. So right about 5 minutes drive from where I live, we have the Polokwane Nature Reserve. I mean, it's one of the best places to find shortboard lark, which is quite a special top puppet as well, and a number of acacia filed specials. And towards the north of town, we've got Birchall's Corsa, Pale Chanting Gosso. And then the main thing is, you can always drive, you can right on the escarpment, you can bird forest, you can bird the low fault is only about an hour and a half's drive away. So you've got a variety of habitats in the area. So, I think Polokwane is ideally.
Just to say, while we're doing this chat, if you've got any questions you want to ask Daniel, just pop a question into the comment section. We will answer as many as we can tonight. So just be sure to ask any questions. Daniel is really, in terms of his local area, knows a heck of a lot. And if you want to know anything about where to find different, it's a good opportunity. Good opportunity to have a chat to Daniel. So, Daniel, the most important question we're going to ask is this tonight: where did you get the best pie from during the spring challenge?
Pies are always difficult, but I have to say, it's always going to be a garage pie. A pie from a restaurant doesn't have quite that same taste. I think one I got great. And a Sassel garage there was probably the best. And I don't know if it's because I got yellow-rumped tinkerbird, which is a really rare bird, shortly after that. But I have to say that was probably the best one challenge.
Nothing like pastry that's been sitting in the cupboards for a few months, eh?
Absolutely not. The ultimate.
So you've smashed many records. I mean, a couple of years ago, what was when you smashed the Limpopo record? How many did you get, and when was that?
So that was in 2018. It was a Polokwane 100K challenge. So basically, for those of you who don't know, it's center point. That's Polokwane, the city, and then there's a 100-kilometer radius around it. And with 365 days, you have to try and see possible in that area. And in 2018, I managed to get 465 species, 100 kilometers of my hometown. That was basically the record, and I don't broken yet. I haven't released it. But yeah, so that was basically it.
Yeah, what I'm always interested in is obviously in December, people are starting to look towards next year. We have all these bird lasser challenges, which are really, really great. I think it just makes birding a lot more interesting. You obviously, before the Spring Fling challenge, there might have been a bit of planning you put into place. How does that planning process look for you, whether it be a Spring Fling challenge or whether it be planning for a Polokwane challenge or a South African challenge? How does that planning process look for you, and what practical advice would you give for people? Because a lot of people are now looking and saying, I want to do this challenge or this challenge. What practical advice would you give for people who are looking to plan to take part in one of these challenges?
Yeah, well, for me, I don't necessarily sit down and plan all of my routes out. But what I always do is I try and cover as many habitats as possible of the challenge for. So cover as many habitats as you can, see as many of those general species as you can, and once you start to develop, this is obviously less species you can see, and then you can start working on individual target species. Go look, you go to Sabah, for example, where has Limpopo, and yeah, so that's basically how it goes. You get a good general list going. So start birding around your area and then gradually extend out further and further. And yeah, then once you've covered all your areas, then you can start working on targets by and more effort into finding. It's in general, cover your area and then focus on those target species. That's definitely my main approach. And yeah, habitats. It's all about habitats. It's all good saying, Polokwane Game Reserve, for example, has 300 species, but only really one habitat. So you want to cover as many as you can to maximize the number.
I remember seeing a couple of your older Instagram posts how you'd actually be birding even in your mountain bike, and I think one thing I've seen with your birding is the value of knowing your local patch. I think you've done a lot of birding around your local patch, and I think a lot of people are looking to always travel, which is it's great. We love traveling, and we're talking about doing some trips before this and that, but I think there's a lot of value in becoming familiar with your local patch and trying to bird your local patch as much as you can.
Oh, for sure, definitely. Like I said, I spend probably 90% of my birding time around Polokwane, and it really helps you get your own birds in your area. And then obviously you can expand and begin to develop a better knowledge of birds, maybe a bit farther afield. Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, doesn't necessarily all the time. I'm perfectly happy, birding my same area, my same small patch, the pond, about 1 kilometer from my house. I go there as often as I can, and it's usually a regular. So, I mean, you get to learn a lot about your own birds, and I think it definitely improves the birding as a whole if you bird your own local patch quite extensively.
I think what was quite interesting when we spoke on the podcast, I'm bringing a couple from the podcast in, is a lot of people might not know your father is Professor Derek Engelbrecht, who's one of the best ornithologists in our country. And you spoke about the different approach the two of you have to your birding. I don't know if you want to share how that works, because we've been speaking a lot on the podcast lately about oftentimes people almost try and define your birding journey by the way that they bird. And I think what's great about the two of you is that you've bird very differently, but at the same time, you both are phenomenal birders in your own right. So just tell us about the differing approach between your birding and your father's birding?
Yeah, so for me, well, the difference between the two of us is my dad's more of a bird watcher, and I'm more of a birder. So for me, the main thing is trying to see as possible. Obviously, you enjoy what you have, but I like targeting species if I can get them and building some kind of a list. That'd be for a challenge or just for atlasing purposes, basically, whatever. Yeah, it's trying to see as many different as possible. And for my dad, he's more of a bird watcher, so he's more observing species, feeding behavior, breeding behavior, and absolutely, obviously, dedicated to watching birds, or observing all these small details. And I think birders often skip out on that. And I think it's important as a birder, obviously, to observe birds as well. So I think I've definitely learned that from him. But yeah, we've definitely got differing approaches, ways.
And you speak about bird identification, all this kind of thing. What resources would you recommend? In terms of books you use, maybe websites you use, apps you use. What are some of those resources that have helped you in terms of growing in your identification? And let me just ask this also at the same time, how do you practically use those? Do you, for example, only open the book when you get on the field, or is there some pre-preparation that goes on? How does, what resources have you used, and how do you use those resources to improve yourself as a birder? Because, at a young age, you're a phenomenal birder. So it's really, I just know how that all works out.
Well, I think in terms of resources, I'm a big fan of field guides. Every birder needs to have a field guide. But I certainly don't sit and page through it for hours on end. The field guide for me is just something you see and you really can't identify. You go back to that to help you with identification. But I think for reading on bird biology and behavior and things, different resources out there. Get it online as well. For example, we use Handbook of Birds of the World. There's an online version quite often, especially Arctic migrants, trouble with identification. So, I think definitely field guides great for identification. But yeah, I would say the main thing getting out and actually, obviously, early stages you need a field guide to help you identify the birds. But you learn a lot more by actually being out in the field, listening to the calls, observing the behavior. Field guide. And for me, if I'm targeting species, SABAP, the South African Bird Atlas Project, is absolutely valuable. It's fantastic. Great for type in your species, find when these birds have been seen, find when they sleep, and it's really helpful in targeting a specific species. So I think SABAP is definitely not to be out. Even BirdLasser, connect with other birders, do that, and then find out from them where they've seen stuff. Definitely.
And then on a practical level, in terms of, I'd be aware even on this Facebook Live right now, there might be some newer birders listening. And I think, I remember when I first started birding, learning identification of different species was daunting. It was super scary. Not even talking about pipits and testiculars, that was really scary. And what practical advice would you give to those who are listening in terms of growing in the area of bird identification, improving in that kind of area? What practical advice would you give them? I know you said going out a lot in the field, but you can go out a lot in the field and have no flipping idea what you're seeing. So how do you grow in that kind of area? What practical advice would you give to those who are watching?
Absolutely. No, you can definitely go out and have no idea what. If I go internationally, for example, often you get there and you've got no clue about what's going on around you. So I think definitely the start is always to start in your local patch. I know everyone always says this, but work around the birds in your area, in your garden, and then you can slowly move a bit farther afield, and gradually you'll add on more species and a bit more. And I think birding with other people, more experienced birders, also helps you phenomenally. They can help you with identification, so there's less pressure on you to identify constantly. Because it can be really overwhelming. birding in a very even diverse area. You see literally hundreds of species in a day. So yeah, I think getting out with more experienced birders, and yeah, know the birds in your local area, and especially your calls. Birders don't necessarily focus that much on calls, but I think it's extremely valuable and identify a bird by call. I'd say I don't know, about 80% of the birds are on call, and then you obviously find them much more easily. Yeah.
Oh, Daniel, that's often easier said than done. Let's be honest. Bird calls for me are an incredible challenge. You know, are there practical things you do to learn calls? I mean, obviously, the more you hear birds, the more you learn your local patch. It does help you. But you know, when you, for example, we were speaking about doing a Zululand trip, for example, earlier, there might be calls you don't know. How would you practically learn those calls before you came down to arm yourself? Because I think bird calls for a lot of birders are a real challenge.
Yeah, no, like I say, when you start birding in your own area, obviously, for example, if I were to go to Zululand, it wouldn't be entirely foreign. At 20 flanked pinya up here, still at 20 flanked pinya down at the coast. So yeah, when you bird your own area, obviously going to be some similarities to those areas. And in general, you're going to be targeting. So what I would do, I'm looking for, say, rose-throated longhorn. I then listen to that call. Just attempt to memorize it, and usually once you've listened to it, it's up quite easily. And often you want to listen to other similar species, hear what they sound like, and then I'm always amazed by how quickly birders can actually pick up those differences. And after only hearing the call once or twice, they can really put those calls up. Otherwise, I would say, if there's specific targets for you, go through them, listen to those calls, like I've been saying. And yeah, it's something, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of practice and experience. And yeah, gradually start to pick it.
A lot of birders really have this broader love of nature, and a lot of guys are into chirping and chasing after butterflies and dragonflies. Besides birding, what else what are your other passions when it comes to nature? Do you do all those things, or you just focus on birds?
I'd say birds have always been primary focus. But one of the main things with birding is you get out to these places and you all of these other animals, or all of this other wildlife, kind of stuff. And I'd say I'm definitely interested in dragonflies. If I'm at a pond or something, photograph dragonflies and then try and identify them at home. But I've still got a lot of practice to that field. And herping as well. I'm also really into the often end of time. We should go up into the Voltberg and see if we can find berg adder, for example. So yeah, those obviously come with the birding. And yeah, I'd say dragonflies. I'm into dragonflies and reptiles as herping is interesting. But yeah, if I go out, birding is generally always main focus. Those things come along with it.
And then going back to the Spring Fling Challenge, what were some of those mini trips you did over the time? What were some of the highlights for you? Because birding isn't just the birds we see, it's the places we experience. What were some of the little trips you did? What were some of the highlights over this time? And yeah, maybe just give us some really cool birding spots that you managed to experience.
Yeah, so like I said, when I started this challenge, I decided I'm going to work around Polokwane. So for the first few or so weeks, I worked around my hometown as much as I could. So I think I ended on about 200 species around Polokwane. I decided I can start a bit further. I then made a trip to Blouberg Nature Reserve. Spectacular. Many people, it's sort of a hidden gem. You've got this stunning sandfeld and just beautiful to see Blouberg Nature Reserve. While I was up there, we met Limpopo River, about an hour and a half since. While we at Blouberg, we might as well do Limpopo River, where we got obviously whilst fishing now. And it was a trip down to the south, great, and then also Kruger National Park, the southern part of the park. And it was just this most insane day, not only in terms of birds, but mammals as well. We saw 3 birds. The lions had a kill, another separate lion encounter as well. So these are all things that are coming with all of the birds we were chasing. And I'd probably say the best trip was one we did towards the end of the challenge, around the middle of November. Went up to Punta Maria, so that's the northern part of the province. And many of your tropical African species have their southernmost ranges. We were seeing some really special birds, bombs, pinetails. Spectacular area. It's very unlike the rest of the park. Stunning scene, and really fantastic birds. So that was probably the main highlight of the whole challenge for me.
So Daniel, last time we chatted to you on the show, I mean, you this amazing birder, you know, one of the, probably not just one of the best young birders in our country, probably one of the best birders in our country. And you had one bird missing on your list, the buff-spotted flufftail. Have you managed to get that bogey bird off your list yet, or is it still a bogey bird?
I regret to inform you that I have not seen buff-spotted flufftail yet. It's a bird that really become something else. I think it's beyond the bogey bird level now. I heard them very recently on Cobus Cliff, so on the escarpment in those forests. And it's a bird I've just heard several times, and I still haven't buffed tail. So that's really high on my wish list. And black-tailed roller has now becoming a very close contender for that. And specifically 2 weekends ago, I spent literally hours looking for a bird and not find one. So I'd say those are my main 2 bogey birds.
The question is does a buff-spotted flufftail really exist, or is it just the photoshopped something else? Does it really exist?
I don't know. I have my doubts. That's my conspiracy theory. I'm not sure what these guys are seeing. I haven't seen one myself, so I can't say it exists.
Just have a chat to your dad. Maybe he's just put them in the books to sell more books or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah, true. Very, very valid point.
So Daniel, you've obviously just finished your matric this year. What are your plans for next year?
The plan for next year is to take a gap year. What about going straight into studies? Somewhat of a break, and it's obviously a bit complicated next year still with COVID and things. So I hope to be able to travel, maybe internationally. Yeah, so that would be the main goal. Yeah, that would be absolutely fantastic. So yeah, that's the plan for next year so far.
Okay, Daniel, so thanks. I've got a question from Jessica Smithdorf. She asked this question. Do you have any personal advice for someone that is young and interested in going into birding?
Yeah, no, absolutely. First of all, try and meet up with other young birders. We have a birding group. So if you're at all interested in birding, we're more than happy to add you. I don't know, if you can send me a message, that would be fantastic. I'll get through. I think for any young birders, it's great to have other young birders. Now, I didn't have any Polokwane, but a smallish town, so I'm the only young bird. But yeah, no, it's important to get out with other birders. And when I was younger, I didn't have any young birders, but definitely get out with other birders, get out with other people, and yeah, you'll definitely grow that passion for birds as it goes on. But yeah, no, if you're joining that group, then we can make something.
Yeah, and then just Lisa Greyling just said, hello Daniel, 450, wow, congrats. So just a congratulations message. And also Jessica also early on just said thank you for all the practical advice you gave. So Daniel, we want to just thank you for being on this webinar tonight. It's a bit different. Doing it live as opposed to a podcast. It's been great chatting to you tonight. So just looking forward to just following your progress in the years to come. You've already done some amazing things in the world of birding, and we're looking forward to just following in the years to come and just seeing what happens with your journey.
Awesome, no, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure being here. So, yeah, no, thanks. Great.
Oh, thanks, and I'll check you next time, mate. Cheers, man. Okay. Bye.
Cheers.
So that was really cool. Next week, like I said, our special guest is going to be Fancy Scott. We are looking forward to that, to Fancy having a chat. He is and really a phenomenal birder. For those who have managed to read his books and that, he is brilliant. You'll get to ask him the question. Everyone's going to ask the question, will you be reprinting your LBJ book? You can hear it straight from his mouth. So we're looking forward to that. So